Hello, everyone. My name is Guoddar Hanane, and I'm a PhD researcher from Tofail University. I would like to thank you for having me today. So, my presentation today is going to be about the role of female Muslim scholars in the development of Western knowledge. This is a research paper dedicated to this particular conference. So, to start with, the research includes an introduction, a background, literature review, methodology, results, and a timeline that goes with the results, the recommendations, and a conclusion. First of all, there could be no difference of opinion upon the fact that the very first ayats of the Quran to be revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the very first word was read, recite. Okay, so knowledge, uh, education, and seeking wisdom therefore runs deep into the faith of Muslims. It is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who first said that seeking knowledge is mandatory on every Muslim male and female, encouraging all Muslims to actively involve in the process of educating themselves and others, regardless of their gender. So the Muslims took this very seriously and spared no effort into teaching, okay, into contributing to the world knowledge, and into studying themselves, into educating themselves. Okay, from they started from all that is holy and religious to all that is scientific. So the background of the study, this study stems from the fact that the notion of knowledge has a close attachment to female Muslim scholars. In fact, one cannot talk about knowledge and the transmission of knowledge and history of ideas without relating it to higher education establishment. Like today, we are here in this prestigious conference, in this intellectual discourse, which is taking place at a higher education institution. Okay, so until Fatima al-Fihriya established Jamia al-Qarawiyyin, which is considered to be the first institution for higher education back in 895 in the ancient city of Fez here in Morocco, the concept of higher education was not introduced into the world. After that, the idea spread into the Arab Muslim world, and it took hundreds of years for this notion to be imported into the West. So tribute to women such as Fatima al-Fihriya is actually often neglected. So this research tries to attend to three main questions. The first one, who are some of the most prominent female Muslim scholars that marked the history of ideas? And what are some of the major intellectual disciplines to which these female Muslim scholars contributed? And how did this accumulated knowledge find its way to the Western intellectual milieu? The literature review should start by answering those questions, okay? So before actually talking about female Muslim scholars and the contribution to the West, etc., we should actually talk about the notion of knowledge in relation to Muslims. So after he first established Baghdad on the riverbanks of Dijla in Iraq on Anno Hijri 146, Khalifa Ja'far al-Mansur collected books on literature, geometry, medicine, and even engineering inside a small cabin of his. This small cabin was the nucleus of what was later known as Bayt al-Hikmah. This here is an image of what Baghdad might have looked like at the time, okay? Well constructed, all right? Well designed, okay? And the Khalifa tried to make it even better by making it the heart of knowledge for not just Baghdad or the Islamic Empire, but the world in general, okay? So it was not just Khalifa Ja'far al-Mansur, but other Khalifas also after him contributed to the development of Bayt al-Hikmah, starting by translating books, writing other books, okay, inventing things inside Bayt al-Hikmah. So Bayt al-Hikmah became the largest and the biggest library the world has ever seen, okay, humanity's ever seen. Afterwards, Arabic became the language of science. Thomas Erasmus, who is also who is a Dutch Orientalist, an Arabist, very much interested in the Arabic language and culture and history, deduced from Leo Africanus' account that the Arabs from Fez to Kufa and Basra had more outstanding academies than the rest of the world combined in 1620. Imagine that from Fez, from Morocco to Iraq, people had more outstanding academies, more outstanding establishments for education, for academics, for academia, okay, than the rest of the world combined. And Thomas Erasmus deduced this from Muhammad Hassan al-Zalfasi, his book وصف أفريقيا, La Descrizione dell'Africa. And Muhammad al-Zalfasi was actually a Moroccan diplomat who was taken captive, okay, for years in Europe. And then he figured that many Europeans did not have any idea on Muslims, okay, on Africans, on etc. So he came back and wrote this book, La Descrizione dell'Africa. And of course, Thomas Erasmus, since he was very much interested, he read the book. After this, and it makes perfect sense that the Arabic language became the language of translation. Bernard Lewis states in his article Translations from Arabic that until the Renaissance and the Reformation, Arabic was probably the most widely translated language in the world, both in the number of books translated and in the number of languages into which these translations were made. Yani, imagine that the Arabic language was the language of the world, the language that everybody wanted to translate, the language that everybody wanted to read, to the extent that it was the most widely translated language. Arabic in the West was also very much important. It was the language of science, it was the language of academia, it was the language of the elites. Okay, so it was very important for Westerners to learn this language. Back to Thomas Eurapius in one of his lectures, who says to his students, encouraging them to learn the Arabic language, he says, away with those who want discord among us and are trying with imaginary difficulties to put you off from the study of this most excellent language. So he describes the language, the Arabic language, as the most excellent language. And he mentions that there are some people who don't want you to learn it. He says, I admit that not so long ago, it presented difficulties for us here. But that was because the necessary means, the rules, the teachers, and the books were missing, not because of its nature. But now I hope you will never lack them in abundant supply. So he's talking about the fact that there are resources. People are investing in this. People are investing in teaching the Arabic language, in the books, in the rules, in the teachers. Okay. And by the way, he's one of Thomas Erasmus is one of the people who actually wrote some of the very first books about Arabic grammar in the West. His book Grammatica Arabica. Okay. And basically, it's a translation of Al-Ajrumiya, which is simplification of Al-Alfiya. And this is how it worked. Okay, in the West, you just translate a book and you put your name on it, and there you go. And it is still, even now, debatable about a huge number of books which were translated and deliberately omitting the names of the original writers, which were the Arabs. So, methodology of this book, of this research, includes a qualitative research design, because it's mainly a historical analysis of the literature available of female Muslim scholars that have marked the history of ideas in the Muslim world and beyond. It also tries to dig out the way by which the work of these female Muslim scholars found its way to the Western scientists of the Renaissance. The data collection used in this paper is mainly literary, or the data used is literary, as it deals or dealt the work that demonstrated the female Muslim scholars' contribution to the history of ideas. And the main search strategy that involved in this research is using scholastic search engines to collect the data needed. So the main three search sources are Scopus, Google Scholar, and Illicit. Quickly, a description of the finding or a description of the sample. As it turned out, the majority of the authors are female authors. Okay, female authors, because this research only used research articles or articles that were written in English. Okay, the authors proved to be mostly female, and those female not English, okay, or Western female, but Arab Muslims from Arab Muslim descent. So for the disciplines in which these female Muslim scholars were involved, we start with education, medicine, and astronomy. In education, we had Fatima al-Fihriya, Naima bint Ali, Ahmed Zainab bint Makkah. So these female Muslim scholars were very much interested in it. They held seminars, they held lectures, okay. They even invited people, all right, to learn more about different disciplines, especially related to education. In medicine, we had Shifa bint Abdullah and Rufayda bint Sa'd radiallahu anhuma, and those are two major, let me call them medical practitioners of the time, and they were hired by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they're first medical practitioners in the history of Islam. And to have female medical practitioners at the time was very rare. Not only that, but they also have participated in during wartime in helping soldiers, okay, helping soldiers in attending for their medical needs. In the field of astronomy, and it's really interesting to talk about astronomy even now and relate that to female scholars. But at the time, 967, talk about Al-Jalila or Maryam al-Usturlabi, who was an amazing astronaut. And Astrolabe, okay, Astrolabe in Arabic, Astrolabe in English, is the name of an invention related to astronomy that she herself invented. Religious teachings, and maybe this particular domain was the most one, or the major interest for all Muslims, male and female. So we had Aisha bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha, Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha, Darda radiallahu anha, Zainab bint Sulaiman. So all these female Muslim scholars were actually interested in this domain, and they tried to simplify religious teachings. They tried to transmit Prophet Muhammad his legacy to different people. Okay, they held lectures also and seminars. In the domain of economy, we had Samra and we had Shifa again in this field too. She was also, both of them were hired by Prophet Muhammad to attend for what we would call today a market inspection. They were kind of market inspectors that tried to see that there was no sort of corruption rule then within the Muslim market. And to think about this at the time, it's kind of innovative. Okay, it's revolutionary, to think about this particular type of a job. Math. It's really interesting to talk about the field of math and related to female Muslim scholars. We had Sutaita and we had Lubana. Okay, Lubana of Cordoba, or Lubana al-Qurtubiyya, 987 and 984. And those two female Muslim scholars were really, they had this great impact in the domain of math. Okay, they had these equations that has never been solved, and they solved them. They introduced new concepts into math, and they were like major contributors to the field of math in the world. Architecture, we had Zubaydah bint Ja'far ibn Mansur. No, Zubaydah was actually the wife of Abbasid Khalifa, and she was really interested in education, poetry, intellect in general. Okay? Her palace was a place for people to meet, for seminars. Okay, she herself attended seminars in her palace. She would bring scholars of different disciplines to her palace to, hold these lectures and seminars. Okay? And she was really interested in the field of architecture. She even invented what we would call today the system of water pipes. Okay, she went to on one of her visits to Mecca, and she figured that many people had difficulty in accessing water. Okay, and she came up with this invention of water pipes to make a water closer to these people. Nusayba bint Ka'b, and honestly, Nusayba bint Ka'b radiallahu anha was like one of the bravest people I have ever read about. Okay, she would fight side by side with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was a first class soldier. Okay, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about her in such a way that shows her bravery. So now we go to the timeline, which is a chronological overview of significant intellectual exchanges between Arab Muslim scholars and the intellectual environment that contributed to the European Renaissance. So to start with, in the 7th century, the introduction of Islam, that was like the major world event. So the introduction of Islam into the world. 8th century onwards, the great development in the Muslim world of different disciplines and scientific discoveries in which women played a major role, starting with Umayyad, Khalifat to Abbasid Khalifat, and it goes on. On the 12th century, and this is a very important milestone in the history of humanity, both for the global south and the global north, because the 12th century was kind of the linking point between those two civilizations. So the Arabic Latin translation movement launched in Europe, allowing all the books, or at least most of them, to be translated from Arabic into Latin. All those that were written by Arab Muslim authors and scholars, including female scholars, were translated into Latin. So the Renaissance on the 14th century starts after people were deeply influenced with thoughts coming from the Islamic Empire and from other, maybe the other places, but mainly the Islamic Empire and Islamic scholars, including female Muslim scholars as well. So it is as well possible that now on the 21st century, it is as well possible that all we know has been transmitted to the West from the Muslim scholars, including, again, the female Muslim scholars. So this research would leave you with two major recommendations. The first one is incorporating the literary works and scientific discoveries of female Muslim scholars into higher education curricula. These women should be remembered. Their work should be incorporated. They should be known, okay? Various academic departments, this is recommendation number 2, within higher education institutions should integrate information about female Muslim scholars in their curricula to tailoring the inclusion of this specific to their specific subject matter that they are instructing. People in education can talk about Fatima al-Fihriya, study about her. People in math can talk about Sultaita and Lubana of Cordoba. People in astronomy can talk about Al-Jalila and Maryam Astarlabi. I mean, every domain can talk about female Muslim scholars from that particular domain. Okay. So one last thing to finish up with this presentation would be what Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when a person passes away, their actions cease except for three: an ongoing act of charity, knowledge that continues to benefit others, or a righteous child who prays for them. These women here have actually contributed to the world of knowledge, okay, have contributed to what we know today. It's both charity and knowledge that benefits others, okay, benefits us even today. So we should really remember them. We should celebrate them. We should recognize them and recognize their contribution. It is important, especially within higher education curriculum. And these scholars have made significant impacts in diverse fields and left an everlasting print that their names should echo in their fields. But unfortunately, their work is overlooked. So research such as this one should really be incorporated more. So these are some of the references I used, and thank you.